Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak. We continue looking at the issues behind the headlines with Rosa Buyi, woman representative, Kisumu County, Kipruto Arap Kirwa, deputy party leader, ANC, and Joy Mdivo, a lawyer and also social political commentator. We've just been looking at the demolitions, ongoing demolitions, and the fact that the headline is screaming on the standard this morning that the demolition squad is off to 13 counties. Despite what is happening in Nairobi, this exercise will continue and will come to other counties as well. Now, before we go and take a look at what I said, we need to look at the conduct of the National Assembly. Big question is, has the president bitten more than he could chew with his demolitions? Because he has his Big Four agenda. He's fighting corruption. This issue about demolitions has just come up in the last 2 weeks or so. Asha Mwilu, our features editor, did a feature which ran yesterday on Citizen TV, just showing the extent of developments and infrastructure built on what should be riparian reserve. And yes, the buildings we've been seeing, UK, Oshwell, the perimeter wall and all these other things are just a tip of the iceberg. If you watch that story, it means when they talk about 4,000 buildings, it could actually be more than that. And these are the pictures you're seeing on your screen. The president has about 4 years left, yeah, in his term. Do you think he's able to take this up, take up Big Four agenda and corruption and handle all this? Because if he fails, if he just demolishes 2 buildings and leaves the 4,000 others, he'll be considered a failure, don't you think?
He will. You know, when you look at the pictures on our screens, one thing that comes very clear is that the only way these guys were able to do this is if they engage in corruption. Right now, I'll tell you for a fact, if the president does nothing else, but is seen to tackle corruption in a manner that deconstructs it, we do not care about the Big Four agenda. We'll be very happy about the big handshake. But if he deals with corruption, he'll be a roaring success. And the litmus test is in if he sustains what he has started. The same way he has decided, I'm not picking anybody's phone call, I'm not defending anybody, deal with it. That should be the same resolve. And now this is the time, because something very curious came out. When they released the initial findings of the lifestyle audit, they said there are actually more good civil servants than there are bad. I am challenging the good civil servants. Don't wait for the order to come to send Sani somewhere. You now take up the mantle and said, you know what, now there's political goodwill, let's do this thing right. Let's give the president the support he needs to demolish this. Because if we just do Oshwell, UK, Taj Mahal, it will be, oh, we are targeting the Indians. Yes. Let's just go after everybody.
Yes. And if the president or this push just targets about 50 buildings or so, yes, it will cause quite some ruckus. But the extent of the problem is that if you fly over the industrial area, people have built warehouses on rivers and everything. If you do not touch those and you only destroy about maybe 5% of the buildings, there are those who argue that probably it would be a place where the president should not have gone in the first place.
You see, the foundation of the destruction of buildings on riparian land is to keep the city clean, so that the waters that flow through the city, you can even drink it, the way you can see in some other capitals. But if you leave those go-downs, the effluent from the go-downs are going to destroy the very environment that you are trying to reconstruct. Now, my prayer is that apart from bringing down the buildings, let us also have a very clean riparian area, all the way from the source up to where it ends, so that our environment is clean. Number 2, the president should understand that legacy, you never decide what legacy you want to leave. So it seems this is the legacy he meant to.
It's being decided for him.
It's been decided by fate. So the other 4 he can forget. After all, next year we'll be paying, from the revenue we are collecting, we are paying more than 50% the debt. And therefore, he may not even be able to sustain the other 4. Now, the question. He should focus on this.
He's tackling so many things at the same time. He's still intent on his Big Four agenda. Corruption in government is so rampant. Now this demolition of buildings, this is impunity at a different level. Don't you think that at some point even the president might get confused, which way do I go?
No. These are Siamese twins. You kill both. When you are killing corruption and impunity, you are also killing the pilferage of public resources, and therefore he'll be releasing about 1 trillion Kenya shillings to the economy to sustain the programs, because we know history gives us that 35% of all the budgetary provisions goes to waste. Now, when you seal those loopholes, there will be more money coming to the public. There will be now sanity in the public domain, and therefore people are going to behave well.
There are those who argue that probably the president should have stayed away from some of these things, because if he starts and does not see it through, it will have consequences.
Yeah, it's a case of don't start what you can't finish. But I like what he's saying, that it's not for you to decide that people will remember me for this. It is people, it's what you do that people decide was either good for them, and they decide that they are remembering you for that thing that you've done. So I think the president is right on spot. Why? Because corruption has webbed its way in all aspects of our lives, you know, and this is about corruption and this is about impunity. And if he was to tackle just this alone, he would be sorting out all aspects of our lives. His Big Four agenda, if corruption is not tackled today, even that will come down, because corruption will find its way into ensuring that the Big Four does not really come to surface or does not become effective. So fighting corruption and impunity is the thing that he has to do. He started it. I watched last night, I watched Ashemulu's piece. I think it was a really well thought out and good, well-researched piece. But the problem is almost all the buildings, so many buildings in industrial area will have to come down. But guess what? The president now has no choice. If he steps back, he's going to send a really wrong signal that this is selective and this was witch hunting. So he has to go all the way. He started it. He's got goodwill from all Kenyans. He's got political goodwill, and he just has to finish.
Do you get the feeling that probably the president should have actually stayed away from this? Because the magnitude of the work that he has to do to see this through is great, and the consequences will be even greater.
It's one of those things of, if not him, then who?
Then who?
Because one of the things we've always said is lack of political goodwill. You talk about good governance, the next thing is, but there's lack of political goodwill to tackle these things. And it's very interesting, because this is the same president who threw up his hands in the air and asked us, what do you want me to do? But now all of a sudden he has found the wind beneath his wings to do what he needs to be done. Maybe time has come for us to start thinking about giving the president the necessary support as Kenyans to ensure that this gets done. Not for his sake, for his legacy's sake. It's for us and our children. Because for once, as a mother, I have hope that we'll have something to bequeath our children in this city. I mean, I grew up in the ghetto. When I was growing up in Shorimoyo, there's plenty of space between the houses for us to play. I drive through Shorimoyo now. I am looking for the house. I'm like, by the way, where is your house? I'm here on the road and I can't see it because of this encroachment all the way. This is something that has permeated. It's not just a preserve of the rich. It's not just in Spring Valley. It's all over Nairobi. If we can get this right, and Nairobi is actually regenerated, then we reclaim our place as a green city in the sun. Because we become a city in everything else but green.
And of course, that's the biggest discussion, the ongoing demolitions. Now it's moving away from Nairobi into 13 other counties: Kiambu, Murang'a, Baringo, Meru, Garissa, Nakuru, Kilifi, Kisumu, Kakamega, Vihiga, Siaya, and Machakos. No mention of Mombasa here, but I'm thinking that if at all that we have problems in Nairobi, definitely Mombasa cannot go unmentioned. So we'll just have to see how the headlines pan out with regard to this. Definitely the news review right here on Daybreak will continue looking at those issues. Remember, you can also text us on 22422. We'd be grateful to sample some of your views, even as you tweet us at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. And I want us to move on to issues of corruption right inside what should be the august house, the National Assembly. And this has to do with the sugar report. It was shot down on Thursday last week, and on that Friday I hosted the Honorable Rosa Buyu. It was still very fresh in the minds. People had yet to understand the magnitude of what had happened in the National Assembly. Now it has played out in public. Claims that even money was changing hands inside the chambers, not just in the corridors of Parliament or in the toilets. Now Raila Odinga, NASA leader, has come out and said that should be investigated, plus the source of that money. You've been in the National Assembly. You've served as an MP for quite a while back then. Was it as bad that money was changing hands inside the chambers?
Well, I don't know which money, because you see, during our tenure, I served 4 terms. And during our tenure, we used to do a lot of arambis. And every Thursday, afternoon, you used to exchange a lot of money. So
inside the chambers?
Well, somewhere you are seated, Rosa comes and he says, okay, you have a rambe, we were told, take this, 500 shillings. That is the money that I know. Because during the days of Kano, it was dangerous to do anything that they can find something legal to pin you down. Remember the issues of some MPs running away because of mileage claims? Kanu was very keen on doing that. While they were doing a lot of impunity in other aspects, they were pinning down MPs, either failing to ask a question or asking a question because of monetary consideration was a criminal offense. And therefore, people could not do that. But what I know in Parliament is that there is also what we call influence peddling, that you don't have to give me money. I know that you can do something good for me should I come to your office.
Personal benefit or for the benefit of your constituents?
You know, when our constituents are benefiting, you're also benefiting.
But that's the kind of lobbying we see in the United States, Senate, or Congress, where lobbyists promise benefits for the area you represent, which probably it could be argued is for the greater good. That if at all my constituents will benefit with a school, with an airport, if at all I vote for your bill, or if at all I offer my support, then that. But it appears that this Parliament, it's about my personal benefit. Or what will I get as a member?
I don't know. You see, members of Parliament, they start with a very short pay slip. But as time progresses, and she will bear me witness, I remember for the 4 terms I served, my first salary was 18,000.
18,000.
18,000.
18,000.
Yeah, 18,000, which was an improvement from 3,000 as a teacher. Now, but
this must be way back.
Well, about.
Why are you talking about my salary? That was my salary, 3,800 as a teacher.
So now, when after 2-3 months, the pay slip keeps on increasing, and therefore deductions are bigger. They overtake your salary. You end up at times, in fact, the Controller and Auditor General has to caution the clerk from giving us negative salary, because he said either it is 0 or something. And therefore, you could remain at 0 for almost a whole year before you recover from the debts that you've taken. Some of it, even telephone to your constituency, used to be you pay, or any other telephone conversation, messing at the cafeteria and everything else. And even the car loan was direct from National Bank. And therefore, what I know, for the 20 years I served, there is no time I had enough money. By the time I was living as a minister, I was getting 1 million shillings. But at the end of every month, I was almost running in deficit. So if there is corruption, I suspect because many MPs live beyond their means because of the demands from the constituency.
So even back then, corruption within Parliament was still rampant. It's not a new thing.
I cannot say that it was rampant. We were fearing being arrested. But nowadays, there is impunity, and therefore possibly it is happening. I don't want to cast suspicion on them. What I can say about this sugar thing, the body language of Parliament, especially National Assembly, has failed them. What needs to be done, let another institution, let another body take up this issue. But the Speaker, because he said he was going to discipline, to constitute a committee, can deal with members of Parliament inside, then we deal with the sugar issue outside.
So the issue of the bribery within Parliament should be handled
by the Privileges Committee for the time being.
And do you think that that Powers and Privileges Committee of Parliament is able to actually tackle this issue of bribery? Because this is not the first time we are hearing about rent-seeking, changing money within the Houses of Parliament. Do you think the Powers and Privileges Committee has been unaware of what is happening, and it's only this time around that they're being told that, yeah, there was money changing hands?
What we said is mannerism. Once repeated, it becomes a culture. That has been a culture.
So it is a culture, an entrenched.
It is a culture entrenched.
Yes.
And but you see, let us allow Parliament to redeem itself.
Do you think they can actually
I still have hope. Yes. There are many good members of Parliament there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know this is a probably an unfair question, but do you feel a sense in which probably the National Assembly on this particular issue is not able to redeem itself? You're not able to remedy the kind of problem that is there, that the Powers and Privileges Committee must have been aware of what is going on over the years within Parliament, has done nothing. This time round, they're only appearing to do something because it has come out in the public.
Fred, you're so hot on this issue. It's almost like you're saying, set a thief. You can't set a thief to catch a thief.
This is our National Assembly.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
But I'd like to say this. Personally, I did not, nobody approached me with any money, and I did not see anybody take or give money. Okay, personally, I did not see that. But what I'd like to say is...
But did you hear about people who may have received?
Yes, I've heard about it. I've had it even being discussed here. But I'd like to say that because of what happened, or the suspicion that there is, the sugar issue must now be removed from Parliament. I don't think we have the moral authority now to do anything further on it, because we already tainted in the eyes of the public, and we already took very strong positions. What then is going to change our positions?
But yet, I hosted two senators here yesterday, and they said that probably Senate would have done a better job.
Parliament is Parliament. Whether it's Senate or National Assembly, Parliament is Parliament. So I think it just has to get out of the hands of Parliament and be given to the authorities outside. Because again, once you give it to the Senate, it's just going to heighten the wars between, the perceived wars, between the simmering wars between the Senate and the National Assembly. Parliament is Parliament. We've taken hard positions as individuals, and I think it must be given to somebody else to investigate.
Just take it away from Parliament.
Take it away.
Okay. On this issue of bribery, even away from the sugar report, because bribery appears to be a big issue. Whether or not they're talking about sugar, they could be talking about maize, or even peanuts for that matter. But bribery within Parliament is a big issue. Do you think that the Powers and Privileges Committee of Parliament is able to actually investigate the members of the National Assembly and actually help in changing and remedying this situation?
They should be able to, and if they do not, then we revert to criminal proceedings. Because if an organization is not able to police themselves, then they shall be policed. And that's what Honorable Kirwa is saying. When they were there, they were afraid of the criminal repercussions, and therefore they had some level of self-discipline. But now we have a crop of legislators who do not have the same schooling, the same culture, and that is what has brought us this problem. But I've said it here before, and let me repeat it again. We set up our members of Parliament and other people we call waheshimiwa, we set them up to this failure. Because once you go in and all of a sudden, it does not matter you're a rogue, you are who, as long as you go in immediately, you're mheshimiwa. Why is that so? You should just be MP. That's for starters. Secondly, we treat our MPs as if they're supposed to be the conduit via which the money from National Assembly somehow makes it, from national government somehow makes it to us. Most of these MPs you'll find, especially if they come from where I come from in this part of Kenya, even if the MP is not in the home, people wake up and go to his home and wait. A cauldron of tea is prepared. People sit there and they're taking tea as they wait for I don't even know what. You've got issues, school fees, you've got mchango, whatever it is, your MP is sort of your first port of call. Even church, and I'm a very strong church girl. When we are looking at what we need a fundraiser, who has access to the president or the deputy president, who has access to this MP for this area, we all think politicians have got these bags of cash somewhere that they're just sitting with, waiting to dish it out. Now, in their defense, that is part of what is making this, like Honorable Kirwa says, you start with a short pay slip, but the demands become long. We need to get to a place where we pay people for the work that they do and leave it at that, but have an enabling environment also for them to be able to develop their own personal life. Because if I'm spending money dealing with all of you, I'll start looking for money to make more than enough so that I can deal with all of you. Because then again, I have also said it again, and let me repeat it. We also need to learn to demonetize our politics. We spend too much money looking for these offices that now we need to start recovering our financial coffers. And do you think that probably members of the Powers and Privileges Committee understand this, what you just explained, where the position of members of Parliament, do you think they'll be able to investigate and actually pin down MPs who they understand, yeah, we know but you really need this money? The DCI will move in. If they don't, do you think the DCI is a better bet? The DPP will move in. If they don't, they'll find themselves in the same problems. Because don't you and the question is, don't you think the DCI, the ESCC, is a better bet to investigate the kind of bribery? They better do it themselves before the DCI moves in. I think, Fred, it is better we allow our members of Parliament to redeem themselves by almost, you know, some of the sanctions may not necessarily be that go to court. It may be just to reprimand them, caution them, because some of them are young Kenyans. They have come to this town. They need the money. Yes, they need, but they also don't understand that they need clean money. Yeah. Exactly. So they need to be reprimanded. Because you see, imagine if you are to take 20 members of Parliament to jail,
because they were bribed or they bribed. Because you see, what I know is that even those who are bribing might have benefited more than the people who are bribed. Because 10,000, what can it change in a scale of 1 to 10 in the life of an MP? But this person must have got somewhere, got him some 20, 30 million that I'm going to deal with members of parliament. Only to use 5 million. The rest of the money, they keep it away.
But the other concern is because of this bribery issue that probably we are dismissing and saying it's not that big. An issue of public interest, like the sugar and allegations that some of the sugar we are consuming could have impurities. Whether or not that's true, we now do not know, because that report was shot down because members received 10,000 shillings. And now you're saying we should take this issue out of parliament. Isn't that akin as excusing the National Assembly, which is representing many Kenyans, of what they should be doing? Saying, okay, fine, we pay you for doing this job, but don't do it. Let's get someone else to do it.
What I'm saying is this, that the report was shot down. Okay? Once the report is shot down, it cannot come back immediately until probably after 6 months. Okay? Except that there is a window of hope that if the Speaker allows, under Standing Orders 49, if the Speaker allows, then he can reintroduce the question. But what I'm saying is, so what is it that's going to change? You know, because the question will be the question on the same report that had already been laid.
The consequences will be the same.
So what is it that's going to change amongst the MPs when our stand was so, individual stance was so rigid?
Do you think that if at all there was no bribery, that the situation would have been different? That if at all there was no money changing hands? That
Fred, I've already told you I didn't see any money changing hands, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I'm going to say this, that had we been more, and I think that the real issue at that particular time was the names that had been mentioned in that report. Okay? And had we been more sober and looked at the names as just being part of the report and not the only thing in the report.
What may have affected that sobriety? What may have affected that sobriety?
There's a lot of things that can affect it. This guy is my tribesman. I can't let him go down. This guy is my party member. I can't let him go down. There's so many other things that might have come to play, you know, apart from just bribery. So I'm saying, had we been more sober and looked at the report in its totality, without just looking at the individuals who are mentioned in the report, we would have had a very good debate and we would have come up with a totally different scenario. But the whole substance of the report was actually thrown out because of the mention of these three individuals. And the most surprising thing is the mention was to the extent that these individuals should be investigated further. You know, it was not accusing them, but they were being brought forward for further investigation, which I thought was okay, you know, but...
And the same parliament should have been able to amend that if at all that was a problem. But now, the different schools of thought, there are those who feel that report should be reintroduced in parliament through that provision where the speaker can allow the reintroduction of that question. There are some who, like the Mathare MP Antonio Lwach, has given a proposal for a different committee, still involving parliamentarians, to actually take a look at that. Senators say they can do a better job. His party leader, Musalia Mudavadi, party leader ANC, says that a commission of inquiry should be set up to look into the sugar issue. Which way should we go?
Kenyans need to learn to adopt a common sense.
We've already spent 10 million shillings through that process of parliament.
Yes.
In actually getting that report.
Kenyans need to come to a place where we adopt a common sense approach to these issues. I have one major problem with this entire circus. We are forgetting the bottom line. Bottom line is, are Kenyans eating poison? That's the bottom line. It's not who's guilty, who's not guilty, because if this sugar is dangerous, it should be off the shelves from yesterday. We need to also look at the other bottom line. We are talking about the big four agenda. Manufacturing is one of the big four. What is happening with our sugar companies? What's happening with our cane farmers? I was seeing a report, I think it was on your channel yesterday, where some cane farmers were saying, look, you want us to deliver cane, but who do we deliver the cane to? Are we zoning, are we not zoning? People already have our debt. Are you going to deliver more cane to somebody who already has your debt? So these are livelihoods that have been destroyed. These are people who are in debt. We have a sugar glut. We've got our obligations under COMESA of what we should bring in. There's so many things that are out of work with this sugar thing. If we're just fixated on, did Parliament do a good job? Did they not do a good job? We keep losing the big idea in all these little intrigues. And I think we need to come to a place to say, look, what's the common sense approach in this issue? can we first have somebody tell us for certainty, which is something that the report did not answer conclusively, is this sugar poison or not? Let's start from there. Secondly, the ones who brought it in, were they the ones supposed to bring it in? Answer the question systematically as was supposed to have been done. Because the other day I was also watching, I think you had Honorable Badi and Kaninike and
Yes,
Kega here,
yeah.
and I was trying to get to that point of, okay, fine, forget the intrigues. What is the bottom line? And that bottom line is still not being addressed. And that's why we're in this quagmire where we still need somebody else to investigate. Because in my opinion, if the report had answered the questions, there'd be benefit in bringing it back. But if it's just coming back to tell us, you know what, oh, they were denied entry, they did not manage to get a report, so why are we bringing it back?
Okay. Okay.
I think,
To
Fred,
what
let me say
benefit?
this. You know, if you look at the details of that report, the report did answer most of those questions. It's just that Kenyans are not getting to hear the substance of the questions that were answered, because we are discussing the individuals that were mentioned in the bribery and the shooting down of that report. But the report actually did come up to say these are the companies that should be investigated for having brought in probably contaminated sugar. You know, it went into details. And when you ask anyone, and I also listened to some of the members of parliament talk about reasons why they shut down the report, that the report was too weak. Remember, in parliament, you don't have a limitation on the number of amendments you can bring. So if you think there are so many loose gaps, instead of losing the whole substance and throwing the baby out with the bathwater, why don't you bring as many amendments as you'd like to make that to make the report be what you want it to be without losing the substance? The report actually had details of all those things you're talking about, except that it mentioned individuals who some people felt should not have been mentioned.
Wow.
So we threw out all the livelihood you're talking about. We threw out the plight of all the sugarcane growers. We threw out your plight as a sugar consumer, because you don't know whether what you are drinking is safe or not. And we threw out the lives of Kenyans. That's what happened, because we tried to protect certain individuals.
Your party leader wants a commission of inquiry set up to actually take a look at that issue.
Before I get there, it's important that we say one thing that's very important. It looks Parliament is compromised in its entirety. And part of the bribery, all these claims may actually be to cloud the picture and not deal with the issues of the report. Because as Mheshimiwa Rosa Buya said, the first recommendation was all the sugar that has been found laced with the impurities should be destroyed. Which means you are actually telling us for the next 6 months we continue consuming that sugar. Now, my recommendation is there are two types of sugar that must be destroyed. The contraband sugar that came in illegally because they never met the standards. Whether they meet the standards or not, they never met the criteria that they're supposed to be coming under a certain arrangement. Destroy that. Destroy the sugar that has been found to be laced with impurities. This one, the government does not need any assistance from any organization. They just need to wake up one morning, and friend Matiang'i can do that job with the assistance of KEBS and other institutions. Destroy. Finally, let us have a commission of inquiry. This commission of inquiry will be able to exonerate members of parliament about bribery, will be able to tell us the truth about the sugar industry. Because what I know, having served in that sector for 5 years, what I know is that the sugar subsector, unless some stimulus is going to be done by government, is totally destroyed for the next 20 years.
So this commission of inquiry that you talk about should have a wider scope, including investigating the bribery allegations in parliament.
Yes, bribery allegation is part of it, but the most important thing is the sugar. The sugar industry, what are we doing to it? Because we are destroying it, and we are seeing that we are destroying the livelihoods of more than 95 million people.
It's not that we're even destroying it. Like, as we speak here, Muhoroni is down. Chemelil is down.
Sony.
Miwani is down. Sony is struggling. You have the Trans Nzoias, every sugar, you know, and for that part of Kenya, that is the real livelihood. So you have people who can't take their children to school. You have people who cannot, and we are talking about improving lives of Kenyans. Really, how do you improve lives of Kenyans when you've taken away their real means of livelihood?
Are we saying that a commission of inquiry probably now is the best vehicle to actually tackle this issue of sugar? That the whole debate has been so much clouded by issues of bribery, issues of parliament being compromised, and all these things, that we need clarity, and the only vehicle to take us to that clarity is a commission of inquiry. We've had the history of commissions of inquiry.
That's what I was about to say. Me here, commission of inquiry, I just hear ching ching, ching ching ching, ching ching ching,
and an open drawer and shoop.
Yes, and it is saying things that we already know. Yes. In fact, that's why I keep saying, let's use a common sense approach. What do we already know? Can we start already doing something about it? And it's not just sugar. Sugar is what is here now. We used to have a very vibrant cotton industry. We killed it. I mean, I remember when I was growing up, Raymond suits used to be exported to London because it was high quality woolen suits that were in demand. We had so many industries that we allowed markets open up, and we allowed cheaper, lower quality imports to kill that which was indigenously ours, which gave us livelihoods. We need to come to a place where what we already know, let's implement that. If we still find gaps at the end of it, then now let us form something to address a particular gap. Yes. But in my opinion, that is more money down the drain. That is more time down the drain. I mean, we have a government that is already struggling to raise the money that we need to just keep. I mean, Parliament has already spent 10 million shillings within that probe that whose report was thrown out. Another commission of inquiry would just need more money. But our time is up, so I'll give you an opportunity to give your final.
I think saving lives is expensive. Saving lives is expensive, and whatever the government needs to put in to save lives, because remember that this sugar is consumed by almost every Kenyan, you know, except in whatever way. You can eat it in cakes, you can eat it in, drink it in your tea. So whatever you need to spend to save the lives of all the Kenyans, I think is worth it. But before we take the next step, we must ensure that whatever step we take is going to give us results, real results, that is going to help us save the lives of the people, as opposed to doing something cosmetic just to be seen to do something.
So, Mheshimiwa, you say Parliament can't do it, the Senate included cannot do it. A commission of inquiry, you're opposed to that. Which route do you think is best for us?
You know what? Just like Joy has said, there's a lot in that report. There's a lot of things that have come out that do not need Parliament to sit again and debate it, you know? DCI, and whatever the authorities that we have, let them go in.
Using this report?
No. Even if the report is just one thing that was tabled that's been defeated, but the information is already out. Yes. You know, people have the information, and they also have that information. They should go out and confiscate and actually destroy the sugars that are indicated to have had mercury or whatever. They should do that, because if they don't, more and more Kenyans are still going to drink that sugar and put their lives at a risk, okay? The companies that have already been mentioned there, they should go after them also and look and investigate them, you know? I don't know on what basis, but even if it's on suspicion, investigate them, because they're still innocent until proven guilty, but investigate them, you know? Because that has already been named even in that report, and people have those facts. So let's not lose those facts as we argue about bribery and the report that was shot down, and lose facts that can be useful for the whatever to go to move further. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Honorable Rosa Buyu. Final comment.
Well, I still insist on commission of inquiry to bring a document that can be a working paper. That report of Parliament may start by being the working paper, but we sanitize it and we make it clean, and we allow it to be focused. Otherwise, we are going to leave it to nobody. And when something is left to nobody, nothing is going to be done.
Okay. Finally, Joy.
In my opinion, we need to start looking at the entire structure of the sugar industry. Do we have too many factories? Do we have enough acreage to sustain the industry? Are we doing enough to protect our farmers? When you talk about Trump making America great again, is this trying to sometimes look at what do you have that you can preserve? That's what we've not done with the sugar industry. And I think we need to come to a place where let's forget about big business, because in Kenya we take care of big business and we forget about the people who are building the building blocks of this nation. Let's go back to the basics. Let's look at how these factories have been operating. Are they treating the farmers fairly? Are they protecting the environment, the soil where they're putting this, the effluent that comes from? Are we doing things right? The way we are demolishing buildings, let's also demolish these things in business, because we've protected big business for so long that we have killed small business. It's time for a paradigm shift.
And they say that anything that happens definitely has a reason and has a purpose, and this whatever discussions we're having in as far as the sugar matters are concerned, however murky they may appear, may just be the first discussion into looking into the bigger problem that is our sugar industry. Thank you so much, Joy Mdivo, lawyer, social political commentator, Kipruto Arap Kirwa, deputy party leader, ANC, and Rosa Buyu, woman representative, Kisumu County, helping us look at the issues behind the headlines, the two main headlines that has to do with the conduct of the National Assembly in as far as the sugar report is concerned and the ongoing demolitions in the country. We're going into the weekend. DJ Roy T-Boy will be coming up later after Fashion Friday. But before all that, let's take a look at what's happening on our roads.